Elena, congratulations on your new documentary, Looking Up.
Thank you so much, Gig. It's really exciting to be here with you and to be able to talk about this. You're my first interview since we put the film out there, and we're premiering in a little bit less than a month. So excited.
Well, we will ease you into this interview, but it's always lovely to talk about positivity, and that's what's lovely about this film is that it sends out a lot of positive vibes in the way how you actually told the story. But before we get started, tell us what actually sparked you to make this documentary in the first place for Looking Up.
Well, this documentary, this feature documentary, did not start out as a feature documentary. It started out as a short public service announcement because Eitan, the subject of the film, I knew socially, and he wanted to do a public service announcement for a trial, a medical trial that he was in that was expanding from a small number of patients to a large number. And he wanted to pay it forward by telling his story and encouraging other people with his eye disease to take part in the study. And he really called me just for advice. I knew him through my daughter. They were friends in college. And he didn't know the first thing about making a film. And she was like, "Oh, my mom's a filmmaker. Why don't you call her?" And it started as a public service announcement and it morphed into a feature adventure positivity documentary. So, life has interesting circuitous routes sometimes, and this was one of them.
Now, tell us how you convinced Aton to participate in the full documentary, in for the purpose for looking up rather than a public service.
Well, it uh, it really happened because he approached me during COVID. I mean, early COVID, when there were no vaccines in late 2020, and uh, when we did all of the filming for his interview and the B-roll in New York, and we were then going to go down to where the hospital was to interview the doctors who were so excited. And the night before we were supposed to go, I got a call from the hospital lawyers. And they said, "We're not going to let your team in. It's the middle of COVID. It's a clinical environment."
Hmm.
And well, the team was just me and my cinematographer. I couldn't convince them. They wouldn't let me do the interviews off campus. They just they would have none of it. And so I said to Aton, "Well, we can shelve this project, or we could wait until COVID's over." And at the time, it seemed like, who knew when that would happen. And we were discussing it actually at my house, and my husband, Jay, who's a subject in the film as well, is a crazy rock climber, amateur rock climber. And we had a photo album out on our cocktail table of a climb that Jay had done uh, in 2017 of the nose of El Capitan. And Eitan, who's an outdoor enthusiast, was just so fascinated. And Jay was home, and they started talking about the climb. And Jay was planning to do a second ascent of El Capitan on a different route. There are many routes on El Capitan, the nose being the most famous. And he looked at Eitan, he's like, "Why don't you join me?" And I looked at Jay, and Jay looked at me, and I looked at Eitan, and I knew that this route that Jay was planning to do was an aid route. For those people listening who don't know what that is, rock climbing can be done as free climbing or as aid climbing, or in the case of Alex Honnold in Free Solo, as free solo climbing. Free soloing is climbing without a rope, which very few people do. Free climbing is climbing the way Alex Honnold climbed, but with a rope in case you fall. Just for safety, you're using your hands and your feet to propel yourself up the mountain. And aid climbing is when you can't climb free because either the route is overhanging or it's sheer, and you need to use different mechanisms, different technology to climb up the rope. And I knew that Jay was planning to do a more difficult route on El Capitan called Zodiac, which is overhanging, and it's an aid climb. And that was something Eitan really could do. Eitan's very strong, um, and it doesn't involve being able to see the placement in the same way. And so Jay said, you could do this with me. And Eitan, well, when people see the film, they'll see how positive he is and really willing to take on new challenges. And he was all in. He was like, oh, yeah, hell yeah. So that's how it became a climbing film, and that's how it became a feature film. And the film tracks Eitan as he learns how to climb and then climbs. Um, but also interwoven into the narrative are these other scenes that involve education about visual disability and incredibly exciting stem cell research that's being done that may lead in just a matter of years to retinal transplants that will cure retinal blindness. Um, and then a lot of positive psychology is in the film, which I think you reacted to in the beginning, and which I think is what the film is really about. It's about kind of facing adversity, um, and moving forward, just always being forward thinking.
Well said. And for audiences who don't know, Aton ha has a genetic visual impairment called what? Retinitis
Pigmentosa.
pigmentosa. So could you go ahead and explain it to me? Because like my for myself, I suffer from uveitis, and that's actually just temporary, and so partially I understand what he's actually going through, but mine's not a permanent condition. But could you explain to the audiences what RP actually is all about for him?
So RP is a disease. There are many different causes of blindness, and RP is a disease that's genetic. It's extremely rare, and it affects the rods and cones in the retina. And essentially, this genetic disorder leads to the diminution of these cells and creates this tunnel-like effect that's very, very gradual. So you lose, in most cases, you lose your peripheral vision very, very gradually, so that and it inevitably leads to blindness, or always has. In Eitan's case, he says it's like seeing through a straw. It's like everything is black except for this little teeny weeny dot of light, um, which for him is about 5% of vision. Um, there are other ways of RP presenting itself, and one of the people in my film, a man named Robert Heidenberg, has the same disease, but he lost it from central going out peripherally. Um, but in any event, what I found fascinating about RP is that you start out being able to see, and then over the course of a period of time, you gradually lose your vision. And it happens so incrementally that in Eitan's case, he really didn't know that he had lost 95% of his vision. He was serving in the military at the time when he realized he was having some trouble seeing, but he had probably had the disease for quite some time and just been unaware.
Now, through this journey with Aton for yourself, describe Aton because he seems very positive, but it seems like there's this pursuit of happiness, and despite all the adversity, and it doesn't seem like he wants to give up with this upon this disability.
I think that if you were to ask Eitan if he considered himself disabled, he would probably say that he knows that he has a visual disability, but that he doesn't think of himself as a person with a disability. Um, I think you asked about the positivity. Eitan worked in a positive psychology lab of he actually worked in Tal Ben Shahar's lab the summer before he entered the military. Tal Ben Shahar is a subject in the film as well. He is a very well-known happiness expert. He actually taught the class on happiness at Harvard for many years and has written books about this and does lectures all the time. And when Eitan got his medical discharge from the army, because he had was diagnosed with RP and had lost so much of his vision, um, he he told me he let himself kind of be in the black hole for about a month and feel bad. And then he picked himself up and he literally took the principles of positive psychology that he had been working on in this lab when he was younger. And he said, well, why don't I apply this to my own situation? And he did in a very scientific way. I mean, he's very disciplined. And, he started journaling and he started only thinking forward. And he very much lives in the present and taking on new challenges. And he put theory into practice. And anybody who knows Eitan meets this person who just seems different from the rest of us. There's this karma about him that I noticed the moment I met him, and that I think really helps him get through each day because each day is a bit of a struggle when you can't see.
So true, so true. Now, production wise, it is fascinating how you followed him up Yosemite. As I am calling from you right now, I'm actually about an hour away from Yosemite. So I've been to Yosemite so many times, and my extent is just to walk on the flat surface to Yosemite Falls. But tell us on how you actually pulled this off, the journey up the mountain. I mean, I'm assuming you weren't like Jimmy Chin and had to do a free solo yourself, or did you? What was it with an assistant of your husband in this case?
So I was really lucky in that my husband's climbing partner, Willie Venegas, who's in the film and who led the climb up, um, has a twin brother who is a partner of his who happens to be a cinematographer. And the two of them together, they're professional outdoorsmen, expeditioners, and they do a lot of films for ESPN and other adventure documentaries. So I had a built-in big wall cinematographer available to me, and that made that whole aspect of it so much easier. Um, I kept my feet firmly planted on the ground. I was in the meadow of Yosemite Valley, which is this beautiful, as you know, this beautiful valley where you have views of all of the mountains, El Capitan, Half Dome, and all the rest. And it's also a viewing area. There are park rangers there with telescopes and lots of tourists and there I was with, a big lens. And there's a funny story about that with Alex Honold, which I can share if you'd like. And then Eitan and Jay were up on the wall with Willie and with Damien Venegas and with another cameraman, Niels, who were filming up there. The hardest thing for me was that I couldn't direct because I wasn't with them. And so occasionally I would get a phone call to them and, in the evening, but I couldn't speak to them during the day while they were filming. And that was very hard. So I had given like a, long document to the cinematographers of exactly what I needed. But it is a bit of a fraught situation for a director not to be able to direct scenes.
It is, but I guess safety is paramount for yourself, and that's one of the best things. But just out of curiosity, since you mentioned it, Alice Hanold, what did he stop by? Did you accidentally bump into him?
So the lens was really big. I had a lot of equipment, and so to get back to the car at the end of the day, I did multiple trips back and forth from the meadow to the parking. And as I'm walking with this huge lens, and I mean really big lens, um, I passed this guy sitting on the curb wait at the bus stop with a red hoodie pulled over his head. And this is back in 2022. So Free Solo had come out relatively recently to that. And he looks up at me and he goes, "That's a big lens." And I look down and I mean, I'm married to my husband is this climbing crazy person. We've seen every climbing film, and Alex Honold is just, like a known entity in our home. And so I looked down and I immediately recognized him and I said, "Oh yeah, hi Alex." And and he said, "What are you filming?" And I told him what I was filming. And he said, "Oh, I heard there was a blind guy climbing Zodiac. Um, Tell me about him." And I told him about the film. And he ended up asking me for a lift. So it was really, really, really cool to meet him. He is the most normal, totally great person, even though he won an Academy Award and is so famous. But he was really, really interested in Eitan, and we took a picture, and I sent it to Eitan, and I said, "Alex is watching you," and it was one of those little funny side stories of the filming.
That is terrific. That is terrific. Now, for Aton, the one thing I love about this film is that you did do a public service, that there is hope. Could you tell us about, filming all these possible medical solutions that could possibly help him down the road?
Well, I mean, the research that's being done at the Institute for Vision Research, which is it's at the University of Iowa, is so astounding. I mean, it's so extraordinary to think that you can take a skin cell, turn it into a stem cell, take out take that and convert it into a functioning retina cell, transplant it into an eye, and then have that retinal cell grow and communicate with the brain and create vision. They've been able to do this in rats, and they're struggling to try to implement that into the human eye, where they're having some. Their biggest challenge is finding a way to adhere it to the retina so that it can grow. They're thinking of using 3D technology to do that, and that's what they're working on now. Um, they're not there yet. They think they're pretty close. They they've thought that for a while now, but it does seem from spending the day there that they are getting close. And when you think about it, I mean, it's like a bionic eye, except that it's actual real tissue. Um, and this is for retinal blindness. But there is so much hope for people who are struggling with this disease and so many other diseases of the retina. The idea, and it's not like cochlear implants. There's 100% real vision that is promised with this medical breakthrough when it happens. There's a lovely scene in the film. Most people have seen it, comment on it, where Eitan and his father Rami are driving uh, back from their visit to IVR and Dr. Stone there. And his father asks him, "Well, how are you feeling about all this stem cell stuff?" And Eitan says, "Well, it's really, really cool to see this happening and to see, all these people, these really smart people working so hard to help people like me. But it's not really relevant right now. It's not an option right now. And I don't want to sit around waiting for my vision to be restored. Like if it can be, great, but to sit around waiting for it almost feels like I'm not happy right now with my current state of being." And he said, and to quote him, "I'm not happy. I'm really happy. I have a great life, and I'm not going to wait around for something to change. I want to be grateful for what I do have. And I think that really is kind of the motto of the film, which is uh, take chances, live in the present, take on challenges, do things that you think you might not be able to do, even if they're a little scary. This is the way to live a good life.
Well said, well said. Um, I've taken a lot of your time already, but tell us what's next after looking up for yourself.
Oh, I wish I knew. This has been a 3+ year project, and I have a few different ideas batting around in my head. I'd really like to do, well, I've learned from this film that I really like doing a personal story about an individual. And I'm a musician as well as a filmmaker, and I would very much like to do a film about something having to do with music. In fact, I just saw the most gorgeous short doc on Netflix that just came out. I think it's called The Only Girl in the Orchestra, that I highly recommend, um, about a double bassist in the New York Philharmonic. And you think, well, why is that interesting? Well, you have to watch it to see. But I mean, that's the kind of film I would very much like to make, a film about somebody in the music world doing something extraordinary. So if any of your viewers have any connections or ideas of great stories, please send them my way.
And by the way, that is a great short documentary. I'm so happy for that documentary subject for for her long career
Yeah,
too.
beautiful. There was another great documentary that I saw, won the Oscar for the Oscar short last year, called The Last Repair Shop. I don't know if you saw that. It's about a program in LA where they take used instruments that are really like on their last legs, and they restore them, and then they give them to public school students in LA who can't afford to buy an instrument. And they talk about how these instruments change these kids' lives, but also how restoring them has changed the lives of the people in this repair shop. And it's an odd subject, music repair shop for a film, and the filmmakers did an absolutely stunning job with this. Again, a short, highly recommend. I would love to make films like those too.
Well, as a documentary filmmaker yourself, you will discover and find these stories and deliver it to the audiences. So let me wrap it up with one last question. I know you already answered the question, but as audiences have a chance to watch Looking Up pretty soon, what is the one most important take you hope they walk away with after watching your film?
I think this is a film about resilience. I think we all have struggles in our lives. Some are noticeable to the outside world, like Eitan's disability. He walks with a white cane. For many people, it's internal, whether it's anxiety or imposter syndrome or a health problem or whatever it might be. I think everybody's got something that is a challenge for them. And I think that what makes this film not just a film about a visual disability is that it's about the pivot. It's about saying, okay, I have these limitations. I'm going to move beyond them. I'm going to push myself to take on a challenge. I'm going to believe in myself. And I think that that speaks to everybody. And I hope that people come out of the theater thinking, well, if he can do that, then I can do that. If he can climb a mountain, then I can do whatever it is that's holding me back. And that they go and live their lives with purpose and fulfillment.
Well said, well said. Thank you very much for carrying this conversation about Looking Up. This is a wonderful, wonderful, inspiring film. Everyone needs to check it out. So thank you
Thank
and
you so
appreciate it.
much, Gig, for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.